All right, as folks continue to trickle in, hello and welcome to the first ever Excavator Safety Allowance Town Hall hosted by Infrastructure Resources. The title of this session is Partnering with Notification Centers Late Locates. It should not be assumed that notification centers have all the answers. In fact, this title was chosen because notification centers are the communication hub between stakeholders. So in a sense, we sit in a unique position to have insights into many other stakeholder perspectives. What we do know as 811 centers is that it will take all of us working together to overcome the current challenges we are facing in the 811 process. Gathered today on our panel are several stakeholders representing the excavation community, utility owners, locators, and, as already mentioned, notification centers. The goal of today's discussion is to provide an opportunity for panelists to share what they are doing to manage during this unprecedented time. This will include what they're doing with their own respective companies and their work partnering with other stakeholders. Today's meeting is meant to be a discussion, though. All attendees are encouraged to ask questions and share solutions as well. Damage prevention, as we know, is a shared responsibility, and we all have a role in the current damage prevention landscape. We all got to this place together, and it's going to take continued communication and teamwork to move forward to prevent damages, protect our families and our employees and communities while keeping vital infrastructure uninterrupted. So during the session, to ask a question, please raise your hand using the raise hand option or type your question in the chat window. I'll be monitoring both. Please keep in mind that this discussion is a solution-based one, and also try to keep your comments brief to allow others the time to interact. Contact information for the panelists will be provided as a follow-up, so further discussions can take place. With that being said, our panel will now introduce themselves and provide a brief background. I'll be your moderator today. I'm Megan Wade, President and CEO of Georgia 811, where I've been a part of the damage prevention community for 16 years. So let's get started with our first panelist. Ladies first, so Ms. Kelly.
Thanks, Megan. My name is Kelly Hines. I'm the Senior Claims Case Manager for ComEd, which is the electric utility providing power to approximately 4 million customers in the state of Illinois. I also sit on the board of directors for Julie, our Illinois One Call Center, as well as act as a panel member for 811 Chicago. And thank you for inviting me today.
Wow, are we going to be shy here? Go ahead, fellas. First one in.
Hello, this is Bruce Campbell. I'm the CEO, COO of Mistig 811, the notification center for the state of Michigan. My background is excavation. I was an excavating contractor for 24 years, civil engineer by education, and I've been the CEO at Mistig for the last 10 years.
Lewis,
I'm Randy Byrne.
Yep, go ahead, Randy.
All right.
So now we're not shy anymore.
Yeah. Randy Byrne with Vanguard Utility Partners. I am the president and owner. We are contract locators in the upper Midwest and down into Arkansas, Colorado. We have about 700 locators running around on a daily basis, painting dirt.
All right. I'm Louis Panzer. I'm executive director of North Carolina 811. I've been in this role for 11 years. Previous industry experience around software and damage prevention techniques and discussion. We've had a few research papers published as well, and a book that we had published last year, myself and Dr. Albiati. And so that's my background.
I think that leaves you, James.
Hi, my name is James Moskal. I'm the corporate counsel at Corby Energy Services. I've been with the company for almost 22 years, serving, I guess I have oversight over health and safety, risk management, legal, and IT here. And I also serve as the director on the Mistig board.
Thank you, James. Since the title of our session was One Call, perhaps Louis and Bruce, we could start with you guys.
I think we have everybody needs to mute and not talking, get an echo.
Okay, are we better now? Awesome. Thank you for whoever did that. Much appreciated. What I was saying is, since the title was One Call Center Notifications, could we perhaps start, Lewis and then Bruce briefly, some solutions as the One Call Center or ideas you're working with, and we'll let the other panelists join in. And from there, I will be on the lookout for that hand raised option or your questions in the chat.
Okay, yeah, so, as you said before, the one call is kind of in a unique spot. We don't actually locate. We are just a communication hub. We don't control locate contracts. We don't control the volume. That's all based on the numbers of excavation requests that we receive, and we dutifully transmit those out. That being said, all the one call centers have some responsibility around education. And that education is to not just to homeowners and excavators, but to also operators when we have legal changes or any kind of trending issues that could be happening in our state. We tend to be the focal point of those conversations. And so we try to facilitate those as we can. So in terms of late locates, we certainly are, we have methods for recognizing when a locate is not performed
we
on
need another
time.
mute reminder, folks.
Yep, that's not me, I promise. There you go. Okay. So we do some coordination of communication with the various parties when we can see, for example, through our positive response that we have a number of tickets that are not being located on time. Also, we perform some research, and our role is really more educational. So when we perform research or focus groups with locators and excavators to try to determine their feelings on what some of the challenges are and opportunities, we're able to take that feedback in and translate that back into published articles. We have a committee in North Carolina that's designated to help resolve issues that are statewide issues in terms of locates, for example, with update tickets, and we look for noise in the system and try to see if there's not ways that we can reduce that noise. We recognize at the call center level that there's opportunities on both sides to be able to streamline and fix this process so that there's not waste in the system. Also, there's some mapping opportunities in here that we've talked about nationally and in a lot of different spheres, both on behalf of operators providing maps and to their locators and making sure that those maps are sort of repairing themselves over time and that they're updating those. And a further thing from a one-call perspective is we can encourage members to use the most accurate maps they have to shrink their footprint so they reduce the number of tickets that they receive and take out some of those tickets that are just cleared tickets. Try to get down some of the volume to where it's really specific to work taking place.
You're on mute, Megan.
Who muted the moderator? I thought I was the only one with the power to mute everybody. Bruce, do you have anything to add to what Lewis said?
Yeah, so what I'd like to add, in Michigan, we recently had a change in ticket entry platform, and we're highlighting our electronic weight lining, and it has tightened up letting the excavator choose their exact location of their excavation with a minimal buffer. And then we're working with our members to improve their mapping so they can tighten up their buffers and or their area of interest. Because what we know for sure is that the locating community, whether it's contract locators, in-house or municipal, are going to have a hard time meeting. They've had a hard time meeting demand in the past. And what MISTIG is focused on is how can we take this, I keep saying, steam off the pot, take a little steam off the top of the pot so that the locators are only getting the transmissions they need to actually locate, and that the information provided by the excavator is as accurate as possible to facilitate that whole process. We also had in our old system, and we'll be building into the new system, a locate demand management tool, which is either going to be based on historic data or workflow systems from the locators and facility owners, so that the excavator, once they choose their excavation date, they will be able to see what the probability of an on-time locate is based on that date, and they can shift that date accordingly. Because we, again, trying to take out the peaks and valleys of the system. I'm sure everybody has the same thing, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or, you know, the biggest days, which just loads up the locators for Thursday, Friday. So because we're a 72-hour state. So we're trying to be that middle ground and adjust through our system to assist either with mapping or the data that we have to, again, take that steam off the top of the pot.
Thanks, Bruce. Kelly, James, or Randy? I'm not sure what would make the most sense in the right order unless we just start from the beginning of the process, and that would be the excavator perspective when you are contacting us. So we could start there.
Yeah, I think as an excavation contractor, I know Lewis and Bruce both alluded to it, but one thing, you know, we make every effort we can to keep our scopes as narrow as possible to make sure that we're going to be able to show up on the job and begin work, so we don't have downtime for our crews. And the biggest piece that I think I've seen after, I think it's been 7 years in the MISTIG board now, is the biggest area for improvement, which is a long-term fix, not a short-term fix, is truly the mapping piece. I think we need to get, you know, when we install the facilities, we need to make sure we have accurate measurements. We have the technology now to do that, to be able to feed that back into the system. It can be almost real time, you know, which would obviously help in the damage prevention perspective, but also reduce the ticket volume moving forward, and making sure that when the locators come out, they know what they're looking for, they know where it's supposed to be. There's a lot of guesswork that takes place nowadays, and that results in a lot of added cost. Looking for facilities or calling in additional requests when they can't be found, you know, or finding abandoned facilities that, you know, we weren't expecting to find and waiting for somebody to come and verify that those, you know, are no longer in service. So I think the mapping piece is something is the long-term fix, is the best opportunity to really improve the system.
Yeah, I would agree with that, James. Also from an excavator and utility standpoint, obviously mapping is a big issue. And I think it's not just our utility, it's every utility that's out there that really needs to ramp up on the mapping. And then secondly, you know, planning the work and working the plan, right? Calling in only the tickets that you need and working those tickets before you're calling in other tickets. And communication, I found in my 24 years of experience with damage prevention, communication is really the key, right? Getting upfront information to the locators, and not just to the locators that are locating for the large utilities, but also for the municipalities as well. They also have locators, and a lot of them experienced, you know, crazy upticks in ticket volume last year. Some municipalities were looking at 300% increase in ticket volume. And for any of these small town type municipalities, that's a pretty big mountain to try to hurdle, right? If you've got limited resources as far as locators go. So communication, getting the information out to those folks that are going to be impacted most has really helped us kind of streamline. And we've had some pilot projects with some of the larger fiber projects that have come through, and starting at the design stage, working from there and moving forward, and ensuring that everybody is aware of what they can expect out there, and also some key contacts with both the utilities and those locate vendors when they do run into problems.
Randy, do you have any comments? And then I do have I see your hand raised, and there was a question in the chat we'll get to in just a second.
Okay, I'll speak as a locating company, and that is we don't get to control the volume, nor do we get to control the start time. So what we do on an annual basis is go out and shake the trees and figure out what utilities are going to be doing as far as the amount of work. And we also try to talk to the excavators in the field to see what kind of work they're going to do in the following year or the coming year. So from that, then we try to figure out what the staffing is. I know something unique. I don't know how many call centers do it, but Colorado 811, they hire a company. I think it's Foresight Advantage is the name of the company, and they go out and look to see permitting and how many permits are being pulled. I'm not sure what the equation is, but they've done it for like the last 10, 15 years to try to figure out what the expected increase in ticket volume is going to be. And then we can get that information. We can kind of figure out our own plan as far as our staffing needs, what they're going to be. But as far as a call center, you know, I'm a big fan of midnight tickets. We have some areas we work in that have midnight tickets. And what that does is just creates an efficiency for us where we are not out chasing due times. We're out there working an actual route. And throughout the route, we can just be efficient and run the route. Obviously, you can get more work done that way versus if you're getting close to due times, you're bouncing around all over town trying to chase due times. It's a big advantage for us to know the tickets are due at a certain time at midnight. That makes a big help for us.
I've never heard anyone describe that as a midnight ticket, but because the due date and time is midnight, it gives you more time to plan your route. Is that what you were saying?
Generally, how they work is if you call it in today at noon, today doesn't count, and then they go 48 hours, and then it's due that midnight of that night. It has nothing to do when their excavator is going to go to work at midnight. They're obviously not going to go to work at midnight. It's just a way for everybody to know the ticket's cleared at midnight, and it's a way for us to not have to chase times at 8 o'clock, and then we drive 5 miles down the road to go get a ticket that's due at 9 o'clock, and then drive back another part that due at 10 o'clock. We can just work a route and have every ticket due at midnight.
I see.
And it hasn't been established as a best practice, but I think that 3 full business days or full business days do make it easier for planning versus a fixed hourly, the 72 hours or 48 hours that may vary depending on when that ticket was created. So giving those full days, I think that makes sense.
Gotcha. The hand raised is attached to a guest called Executive Director. So Executive Director, I don't know your name, but if you'd like to come off mute and ask your question.
There we go. I'm Brenda Regal. I'm the Executive Director for NUCA of Pennsylvania, the National Utility Contractors Association, Pennsylvania chapter. So I've got a lot of great panelists here. What I'd like to know is, let me just give you a slight analogy. I kind of like to look at it this way. Kind of like to see the one call where we look at ourselves kind of like OSHA does, where we want to engineer the problem out at the beginning. So if you have a 5-foot door and OSHA's looking at that and they say, well, a 5-foot door, you have to wear a hard hat to go under the door. How can we engineer that safety out and how can we make that better? So what they do is they come back and they engineer it in the beginning and they say, okay, well, let's raise that door to 8 foot. And now you can walk under that door without wearing a helmet. So I'm guessing what I want to ask this panel is, where is everyone at? I heard Mr. Moskal, is it, James, talking about the mapping, but we can't get good mapping unless we have subsurface utility engineering. Sue, where are you guys going with that in your state? Because here in Pennsylvania, we have Sue in our language, but we're going to tighten it up more like Colorado has done. And I think a lot of other states should be looking at that model legislation. We should be moving in that direction if we want to get that good mapping. We want to know where those utilities are. I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but you know, the UK and France are ahead of us in this game. We need to catch up, and we need to catch up quickly. So where is this, you know, what are your thoughts on Sue in the design and planning phase? So then contractors will be able to give better bids in the end. I represent contractors. We're looking at it from a safety perspective. We'll have a better idea where utilities are. We'll be able to give better pricing. So where is this panel, you know, where you guys feel on that?
So I just would like to touch on that because in North Carolina, we do have a survey design ticket. It is legislated as a particular ticket type, and it provides parameters for the operators to respond. But only one of those parameters is an actual physical locate. So offering up plans and maps, and it circles back around to the quality of the maps that you have in order to provide. It asks for the best available maps to be shared. I think sometimes surveyors and designers are disappointed when they don't get a full locate with all the facilities marked. But again, as we're talking about late locates and strain on the system and that, you know, the idea with that legislation was to allow the operators to give the best maps, either give them to them or make them available to them to see for their planning purposes. Because in many cases, folks are just planning a project that may not even come to fruition. It may be a large area, and then they want locates out, you know, on the entire area. And again, that's taking resources away from other types of locates for actual impending work. So I think it's important to, I'm a firm believer in Sue, a firm believer in that whole design bid concept, so that work is planned and communication happens all the way from the inception through the completion.
If you, I can jump in here too, Megan, if you'd like.
Well, you
so
can,
we're-
but she asked James specifically. I
Oh,
think
that's
you guys
okay.
should have
Well,
waited.
Good.
I really want to hear from everyone on the panel. I'm trying to get this broad sense because I've been pushing through NUCA National. So you're going to start seeing NUCA National probably. I'm certainly hoping so. Start to put an effort forward to try to bring Sue to every state.
So what we're trying to work on in Michigan, or what we're working on in Michigan, is a way for excavators to be a part of the process, to be provided the same plans and drawings that the locators receive, so that they can empathize with what the locator's working from, to see maybe why the locates are the way they are, and then also to provide us feedback on what that information is. We've also met with the legislature to ask them to set aside money from the infrastructure spend over the next 5 years that's coming from the feds and being matched by most states, to put a set aside for, of course, awareness and education, which is part of our responsibility as a notification center, but also to establish a mapping process to assist not only larger facility owners, but the municipalities and smaller facility owners to work with the contractors that are going to be in that right of way with all the improvements to the infrastructure to document the new stuff that's being put in, which is covered by the MISTIG law, that it is required from 2014 that everything put in the ground must be detectable. But also, while we're there, let's grab the legacy data as well, and then provide that information and house it at the notification center, so it can be shared. Much like North Carolina, we have a design ticket that we can provide that information to designers and planners, because I feel that's the number one safety way to provide safety to everyone working in and around the right of way. Is let's design around possible conflicts.
I couldn't agree more with that. And we actually have a division that does some of the Sue work for us. And I think one thing that's helpful about that is, you know, it's one thing to have that information available, but to make sure that that information is available and usable for construction, you know, is a challenge sometimes. We have some firms that do that work that have never done any construction work, so they don't understand sometimes, you know, how that translates into making a project constructible, if a route needs to be altered, you know. So it's putting it together, getting the initial information, and then developing a plan around that. And to Bruce's point, one thing that I think is going to be a big challenge, but, you know, we do a lot of work in Detroit, for example, and I don't know how many projects we do down there that obviously once you excavate below the surface, you find out that job can't be installed as planned. And not only that, but, you know, the corridor is full. You know, 20 years ago when I started, there was a lot of fiber optic work and, you know, putting in 20 conduit, a lot of rainbow bores and things like that, that just, you know, basically filled up the utility easements, and trying to find space now is nearly impossible in some of these areas. So, you know, what might have been a 100-foot, 200-foot job, now you're redesigning to go around the block and change, you know, the path. And a lot of times we don't know that till we actually open things up and begin construction. So I think having that information available, but, you know, also using it in the plan for new construction as it in the design phase of it will be incredibly useful.
I'm
Yes,
sorry, Randy, go ahead.
I was just going to, since it's political season, I'm going to avoid the question and move to a different one since it's about late locates. The SUE work doesn't necessarily help me or hurt me in either direction, really. It'll increase the volume if we have more SUE work. So I guess we'll just adjust to it. So it's not that big a deal for us. But I would say that my opening comment was about we don't control the volume or the start times. So since we don't control the volume, thing that happens is when we sit there and we figure out what the staffing needs to be for a particular state for that year, and then all of a sudden we have it figured out, and then all of a sudden a fiber project rolls in and says they're going to put in a million feet or 2 million or 5 million feet in the state. All of a sudden it messes up all of our staffing, but then within 2 weeks they start bringing in bore rigs and start doing boring. Well, that certainly puts a big hindrance on us. And what I would like to see for a solution on that would be an advanced notification type of ticket. I don't know how it would work, but I'm just throwing it out there that an advanced notification ticket, that if you're going to do any type of work, you can put the definition of what the work is or the size of the work or the number of bore rigs that you're going to bring in, but you have to do a 3-month advanced notification so the locating companies know. The problem is when these companies roll into town and all of a sudden we need 10 people or 20 or 30 more people that we have to hire. Well, we're scrambling. It takes us at least 90 days to get some people hired out in the field, get them trained, get them going. And these advanced notification type of tickets would give us that opportunity to get it staffed up and get information that we need.
If I could just kind of add on to that really quickly. So the state of Illinois, we are currently working on a large project process similar to what you're discussing here, Randy, with notification up front as to the work that's coming down the pike. SUE, on the other hand, I'm a big fan of SUE. My utility is not there yet. And I think it was Lewis that made that point that, yeah, the utilities are going to, take on a brunt of the cost for that. We've got more than 60,000 miles of underground facilities right now. And for us to go back and, subsurface utility engineer or identify where all of those facilities are would be a huge undertaking. And then I think it also doesn't preclude the delay in your downtime. Because once you come across a facility that is not marked out in the field, you still need to, shut your job site down, wait for that utility to identify what that facility is and whether or not it's an active line or not. So I agree that SUE is the future of damage prevention, but I just fear that it's such a long way off that we need to think about more immediate solutions to the problem, and design stage is one of those, right? We can at least let you know what active lines we have out there. And then of course, we're going to mark the active lines that we know are out there, but also there's a lot of private utilities that are out there as well that aren't going to be part of that process. So again, I feel like SUE is a great place to get to, but there are other things that need to be recognized there as well.
So
I agree, Kelly. And to Randy's point, I think SUE is a part of the discussion, and we've got several other questions stacking up. Sorry there, Bruce.
No problem.
And there are other topics. I think maybe, Scott, a whole SUE town hall discussion might be in order based on how some of this went here. So if we could, maybe we'll park that for a little bit, because what I'm seeing is a lot of states do offer design notices. That process seems to be inefficient in a lot of places. Colorado's the only one I know of with an actual SUE ticket, but it seems like that topic's got enough legs to warrant its own meeting. I'm going to back us up. Ed had a question a few minutes ago. Ed, I don't know if you got your answer or not while we've been talking.
No, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, thank you. This is Ed Landgraf with Coastal Marine Operators and Texas 811 recently, so I'm glad to join their team. But I'm actually, in regards to SUE and planning, I'm dealing with a situation in Iowa, of all places, where the telecom is unable to mark through the waterway. So there's marine construction going on in a lake there, and as we build out infrastructure in the U.S., please plan your route. Right, so if you're going to go through a waterway under a lake, river, stream, whatever it is, with whatever type of utility it is, understand that most states' laws cover waterways, and we're having a difficult time with the telecom because their contract locator will not mark in waterways. So, and it's at the Attorney General's office. You know, it's a tough situation, but I just want to make the group aware that as we are advancing infrastructure in non-traditional areas, if you're going through a waterway, please understand that you're gonna have to figure out how to mark that waterway for marine construction in the future. So we're trying to build out a marine damage prevention center of excellence in Texas, and I know that Bruce and others have done this as well up in their state. So I just wanted to make that comment to be folks to be aware of. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ed. There was a comment that I think maybe the panel might want to build a little bit more on. Art Short was thinking about if the ticket lives were a little longer. He's saying in Kansas, there is a 15-day ticket expiration. Renewals are 22% of the volume. Would a longer ticket life help? I can say in Georgia a few years ago, we did expand our ticket life from 21 business days to 30 calendar days, and we did see a reduction in volume that very next year. But I can say at this point, we are in the boat with everybody else, but I will let the rest of the panel speak to that if they want.
Ticket life is 28 days in the state of Illinois. So once you make your phone call, you wait your 2 business days, you start your work within 14 calendar days of your call to Julie, you now have 28 days to dig on that ticket. Last year we had over 1.6 million requests, and over 900,000 of those came to our particular utility. So you know, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword here, right? You don't want to encourage too long of a period on that ticket, because I think we've had those situations where folks were digging on tickets for 6 months and never calling for a remark or renewal of that ticket. And so we want to make sure that we're getting folks out there on a regular occasion to remark our facilities. At least that's my opinion on it.
So Megan, I got a couple things. The collaboration and like Sue is a good model. However, it's a project-based system, and is more difficult to tie in as a unified process, like from project to project to project, to tie them together. But that's something that needs to be looked at. Also, we had a collaboration through our design ticket process. We did a pilot on a collaboration, basically a dating site for plans and designers in the city of Detroit and Wayne County. Went successful. We took it out to the entire state, and basically nobody participated. Now, the problem, to Randy's point, with having those, you know, the advance notice, the market-driven facility owners, cable and telecoms, are not really willing to share that information too far out, because they're in a market-driven situation. And then the gas and electric, they usually share that stuff because they have to report to their regulators anyway what the build outs are. One of the things we're doing to help with the advance notice, we are just built a API for bulk uploads for contractors to work with their workflow systems to stage out their locate requests through a bulk upload API to kind of, again, trying to take the hills and valleys out of the locate process.
Any other comments? Because I know Joseph has his hand raised, and there's a couple other topics scrolling through the chat as well. I think at the end of the day, Joseph, as we get ready for your question, we're going to find we've all got to examine our own lane in this process. What can we shore up? What can we make more efficient? And if we all take that moment, that humble moment, and really look at what we are contributing to the process, what is hurtful and what is helpful, I think that is probably a good place to start. And Tracy asked a similar question about how we can do this in a positive way. And Scott let us know he'd be posting suggestions and ideas following this discussion as well. So if we don't get to all the things in this discussion, there will be a forum in which we can continue the conversation. Louis, Joseph's hand was up before yours.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Joseph, but you're on mute. Joseph, you're still on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes,
So-
very good.
I'm a locator for Alaska DOT. So, and there's only two of us that locate Anchorage area, and our area is big. Our biggest problem is when we get tickets in, our stuff is in the road right away. And a lot of people don't click that box in the road right away. So when I look at a ticket, and if it's not in the road right away, I'll skip it. Because we don't have enough resources and money to go and look at every, ticket. And another thing is we've had a contractor that we have a lot of streetlights, and we had them to ask for 15 miles in 2 days. You got to be, when you put these tickets in, you got to think ahead. A person has to walk that 15 miles with, and put paint on the ground. There's no way you can do that in 2 days, and just stuff like that. And right now we're getting our contractors on our highways and when we go, we'll go out and locate it when they got a big project, and we'll have them come and GPS our locates so we don't go back, because we don't have the funding to be going back and forth. It'll keep a guy busy all summer, just going back and forth to locate. They'll put a ticket in, and 2 weeks later, they haven't even been there, and they'll ask us to relocate it again. So that's the only thing I have.
Any follow-up on Joseph's comments? Ooh, y'all are wearing out the chat. I'll get to
Yeah,
everybody.
I just added some stuff in the chat that would address
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But and
Joseph.
I know there's some other hands up, but Louis, I know I'd cut you off a minute ago.
No,
So
you're
come
fine,
on
but
back
again,
around.
I'm here. It all comes back again to this concept of communication. So, like I was saying in the chat, a lot of times it's a disconnect. It's a process issue. The excavators don't realize maybe necessarily that this one hand over here that's just putting in tickets is not connected to the field to know necessarily when the work is done or the work has begun. And so bridging that gap is a big part of this communication. And what we've been able to do in North Carolina is point these out through committees and communications with the large utilities, especially whose contractors are the ones who could be contributing to this. And so the utilities themselves can actually speak to the contractors, the working for them, entering tickets and doing work, and bring our folks in as well from NC 811 and identify if there's something that can be fixed in the process. It turns into a little bit of a whack-a-mole because Segra did a great job illustrating that they were able to draw down what their contribution to the noise was, but it creeps back up, and that's just one company out of a whole series. So you really do have to be, it has to be continually, you have to be vigilant the entire time and looking at these things and trying to, again, approach it positively and try to figure out if there's a way to fix a process problem in that scenario.
If there's no other questions on what Joseph shared, I'm going to move to the next in line with the hands up. That's agreeable. So Roy Rogers, you are the next one in line, sir.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Roy Rogers. I work for a company called Blunt Construction in Atlanta, Georgia. We are a road paving contractor. To the question that was asked a minute ago about extending the times and the how long a ticket is live for, I will say that in some of our projects, that would be a reduction just specifically for us. And it probably shows in a lot of major cities. Many of these projects in major cities sometimes are built on less than an acre of land, but will go on for 6 months to a year long. And because the size is so small, even states that have a large project program, the large project's not feasible because the site is so small. It would require on a large project a request almost every week to have the whole project remarked. However, a longer ticket, which in Georgia we have looked at a process of that of attaching to these sites in a process to help with these sites, where we would have a 90-day ticket that would be marked in the beginning, and it would last for 90 days, and then a contractor could call in for remarks as needed. I think that would help with reduction of volume on a lot of these projects, especially in major cities. Is something to look at that could help get rid of those restakes that kind of bind up the system. I know it would help my company particularly because we have a multitude of these projects that we wouldn't have to restake every 28 days, 30 days life of the ticket. And then a second question I just had back to the SUE, which can be carried later, but it's something that I think I would ask that would be thought about, is what quality level would you allow to map with? Would you only allow a quality level A with physical daylighting, or would you allow a quality level B with locating only? Thank you for the time.
All right, so Roy, I'm parking your SUE question because we got so many things stacking up on this topic. But Randy is the locate representative in this group. How do Roy's comments hit you about an extended life and time to locate and a large project aspect? How does that impact your team?
Well, if we're talking about time as far as the days that we have to get the locate done, whether it be 48 or 72 hours, that would make a difference for us. But as far as the life of a ticket, I don't necessarily know how that really affects us. From your statement that the volume has been reduced by extending the time. So I couldn't even speak to how that would help or hurt us.
Could I jump in really quick to Roy's question about these smaller, say, acre-sized properties, and maybe that doesn't meet the criteria of a large project within that process? I think this is a good opportunity for a joint meet, right? So getting out there, you can start with the design stage, get copies of the prints for each utility that's on that parcel of land, and then have a joint meet, right? Come together with the utilities and all the stakeholders for that parcel of property to understand exactly what is going on out there, what utilities are present. And then I think that way you could continue on down with that project, still notifying everybody and giving them a heads up that this could be a project that would require multiple remarks, but doesn't meet the large project process. But still the joint meet process that we have in the state of Illinois does provide you the opportunity to meet with the stakeholders and get copies of the maps. That way everybody understands where the work is taking place and what utilities are currently present on the site.
Any other comments from our panelists? Oh, I'm sorry, James.
In Michigan, we have a project 180-day ticket and a normal 180-day ticket, and those are very useful because the normal 180-day ticket allows us to call a smaller project in, but it's you mark it once, we're out there, typically once you've identified those facilities, we don't have to keep calling in and having somebody come out to remark what we already know is there. It doesn't work for every project, but I think it does reduce the ticket volume significantly when used appropriately.
And to piggyback on what James just said, we did designate tickets as normal or project, whether they were 21-day or 180-day. And the project designation is for complexity, because you can have a complex normal, a 21-day complex ticket. And that just indicates to the locator that, hey, this is more than just, we're planting a tree, putting a deck on, there's more going on here than what you would normally expect on a single address ticket.
Right. Gerald Johnson, you have your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. USIC Illinois. I'd kind of like to go back to Randy's prior concern, which kind of been unaddressed nationwide. And I think pre-planning is great. Early notification is great. But the issue that we're really running into is what's the reaction, or how do you address this large unchecked volume that continues to come in where resources aren't available to address this work. We're literally pushing contractors to make business decisions about their own and public safety by going ahead and allowing, let's just call it a license to dig without prior concern for the resources. You know, owners and operators and project planners need to be accountable. Once the excavator gets that job, it's already too late. And again, I understand the pre-planning piece, but the contractor's already gotten the work. Unfortunately, we've got to find out what we do when the volume exceeds the resources. We actually have a municipality in Illinois last year where, you know, I know Randy brought up these fiber projects. It got so bad in this municipality, they had to actually throw up their hands and say, we can't do locates anymore. They basically told the excavator, just call us if you damage something and we'll come out and we'll fix it. They simply stopped addressing the locates, period. That shouldn't happen. So we've got to figure out a way. And again, pre-planning is great. Those are all things that are going to be down the road. Give me 90-day notification. You know, and Randy brought that up. We can plan properly. But we also talked about the fact that telecoms, cable television, they're not interested in sending out information. A lot of those folks are looking for competitive advantage. They're not looking to get that information out early. And when you drop, as Kelly said, 300, 500, 900% year-over-year volume into some of these areas, the work simply cannot get done. And again, calling regulators, doing what you can do. And by the way, all of this taking place during a time, I don't know if anybody else is having this problem, but during labor challenges, where we're all challenged with trying to get the number of people we need to do the work to begin with, it's really becoming an issue. And it should be on the forefront of a safety issue with people to say, how are we going to let people know it's busy? I like it when I hear notifying excavators. What's the likelihood of you having an on-time locate request? That's great information. It's something we're trying to work on in the state of Illinois. We're not there yet, but we're trying to get there. But another problem is, and you know, maybe even Randy can comment on this, the old model of staffing was, what's my volume versus what type of or how many people do I need? The problem is the work's changing. We're ending up with these large scale, multiple mile projects and tickets that are coming in. And a ticket is a ticket no longer exists. Now, one of the models that we're looking at in Illinois is to say, okay, what is the change in the work area polygon? What size work area polygon is the ticket average coming in at? Because that's going to impact my staffing. Putting in a mailbox is not the same ticket as a 1 mile fiber job down the middle of a major thoroughfare. So those types of increased projects, especially with a $1.2 trillion build package where no one considered the resources it was going to take to support that work, is really going to be impacting us. And it's something that's going to have to be addressed. And again, how do we react and what do we do when the volume does exceed the properly planned for historical resources that were needed that will not be available? Thank you.
So
I just want to add to that.
sounds like Randy's got some comments coming.
I was just going to add a piece in there, and that's something that I've kind of seen throughout some of the states that we work in, and there's some momentum picking up on it, and that is the load leveling by county. Some of the states are looking at saying, all right, we had, go back to history, there was 5,000 tickets a day that came into this particular county, or 100 tickets, whatever the number is. And when they hit that number, then they start asking questions. Hey, can we push this ticket off to the next day? Hey, when do you really going to do this work? And then they will push it out further and try to prevent that one day from just being absolutely overloaded. And so that's been helpful on our end.
So
yes, to the comment that was made earlier about mostly the communication side, communications companies do not give us information. They do not want to tell us when they're starting their work, where they're starting their work. Sometimes we have to pull teeth to figure out who the general contractor is, to figure out where you're working and when are you starting, so we can make sure we're prepared for you. And it's hard to get that information, and it needs to come out more readily for us so that we can actually plan a little better, because all it does is help or hurts everybody else that is not that particular company.
So one of the approaches we're taking in Michigan, and Ohio is doing a parallel system, is training excavators to be locators, to maintain the marks, let the facility owners and their locators make their first mark, and then have qualified people maintain the marks. We're trying to get in Michigan, we're trying to establish a way for excavators to be paid to be a part of the system. One of the things I tell our excavators in Michigan is, one of the old adages is, it's only worth what you pay for it. Well, you don't pay anything to be a part of the MISTIG system, but it certainly costs you money when it doesn't work as well. So what I say is, if the MISTIG system is working 85 to 90% on time, then if I was telling you I'd fill your pickup up, if it takes $100 to fill a pickup up with gas, and I'm going to give you $85 to $90 every time, how many times are you going to do that? All you have to do is put $10 in. So what we're looking for our excavators to do is to pick up that piece that's missing in the system, and to participate and be partners in the system, and to use those assets that they're for downtime and that are losing productivity in a positive manner, and help out with the system. And we're building progress on that and establishing those programs as we go forward. And I see some traction there. And it's a business practice. It's a reaction to the business practice, because the locators in our state, they get paid for the initial locate, but they don't get paid for retransmit. So we're not taking money out of the pockets of the locator. Again, we're just trying to take that steam off the top of the pot and work with everyone involved to make it safer, quicker, and more efficient for everyone.
Thank you, Bruce. James is next in line, and we've got a couple other questions, and I see we're coming toward the end of our hour. From just quickly, as a one call center, we do have historical data in terms of volumes, but I feel like we're in a position like everybody else. It's this unprecedented, unplanned, we've never seen it before. It's hard for us to project as well. We're in the dark also, because I know all our one call folks, we're problem solvers, helpers, educators. If we could give you the answer, we would, for sure. So James, what's your question?
Well, you were smart, Megan, to say that we're coming up on the hour, because you guys know me. For those who know me, I could take the rest of the time, but I'll behave myself. But I put this in the chat, but since not everyone's on chat and some people are by phone, I just think, I wonder if this concept of mark once is worth exploring, where the excavators are responsible to maintain the marks afterward. And Bruce just mentioned that, and I've seen some people put stuff in the chat too about the concept of it's marked once for free by the operators, but then going forward, the excavator either does the remarking himself because he's qualified with Bruce's training, or if they ask for a remark from the operators, they have to pay for it. So I think that might be something we could think about. I truly believe the mapping is the answer, but that is far away. I really think the concept of capturing the GIS data, or while you're locating with the new tech that these instruments have, and sending that back, but even the concept of potholing, where one excavator crosses a utility, he's not working for that utility, but he potholed it as part of his other project. If he can give that back to the operator that he crossed, then that would be great. We've had some of that in California, except then the operators say, well, I'm not taking that pothole data because I don't know that your tech was trained properly or the instrument was calibrated properly. So maybe we could develop a standard to have that, if you're going to pothole, you have to collect it to these standards, and then all operators would agree to accept it, and that would help get everything mapped faster. So in the meantime, I was just thinking maybe this mark once could be a shorter term solution until we get maps, and then those get served up and go that way. But I'll be quiet now.
Any very super brief comments on what James just shared? There may be some thoughts there. I was trying to get to John and Jimmy before we wrapped up.
I'll just there was a question in the chat box about liability, and I would have that same question, and who is liable for that damage once the damage occurs if the utility was to mark once. In this business, 1 inch either way makes a huge difference. Either you're in tolerance or you're outside of tolerance. So I think it's a great idea, but I think there's obviously a lot more that needs to be explored there, especially when it comes to liability.
I think if you ask the
That was gonna be
excavators,
my
which we
comment.
did, the excavators say we're liable anyway. We're always the ones who, you know, you're guilty until proven innocent, and they have the liability anyway. So this is an improvement on their side. So that just from the initial
I
discussions.
disagree with that. We have a team that works hard to go out and investigate damages real time. So we're out there with our tape measure, ensuring that we are billing the right party. We certainly, and if we don't have a case against either party, then we're not going to bill either party. I'll be the first one to say we'll write it off. But, you know, and it's one thing with the repair of the damage and who's paying for that. But if somebody gets seriously hurt or killed, that's a totally different scenario.
Well,
Yeah, I have a line
Scott,
item in my financials, Bruce. I say that I have a line item in my financials, Bruce, that would say that that's not necessarily accurate.
Yeah, I understood.
maybe this is another topic we toss to Scott for a longer discussion. Sounds like there's some merit to further exploration on this one. So John, could you want to go ahead and ask your question?
I'm John Chandler with USIC. Also, I'm in the Louisiana area. I just wanted to make something I've noticed since I've been in the field. I've worked in a lot of different states. I noticed in Oregon, they have like a town hall meeting just for the utility companies, the contractors, and the locating companies, so they all can stay on a more even ground. And I know for a fact in Medford, Oregon, it worked out very well. I know in the Missouri area or the Kansas City area, they also had something like that also, which I know also did impact the amount of damages, the type of tickets, and get information about tickets. The one thing that I think we all need to remember as locators and contractors, and even as utility company, the communication that we can have between each other, that personal relationship can impact the way the tickets are called in and can improve some of those problems that we're having in our areas. That's all I had.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Seems like our panel's kind of waiting for me. I'm going to go ahead and let Jimmy at least get his question out there. And then I think at some point, Scott's going to come in and remind us our hour's up.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Great panel. So my background is I ran FP&A, financial planning analysis, and locator incentives, and managed the systems and software that kind of manage the locator headcount and all that stuff at USIC, the largest locating company a few years ago. I've since left, so I have no financial interest in this. As Gerald and Randy and others point out, the main problem here is the volume spikes, not necessarily the volume. Be very careful. There's a big difference. Volume spikes are, last week we had X tickets. This week we got 2X tickets. Okay, that is, until that gets fixed, everything else we say and do is frankly totally worthless. It's the massive volume spikes and massive volume variations from day to day, week to week, that are just really unmanageable. So until that gets fixed, nothing else will matter. The second thing is, I would ask yourselves this question. If there are late locates, what are exactly right now, what are the penalties for late tickets, right? If you want someone to do something and they don't do it and it's late, well, so what are the consequences? I'll tell you right now, they're kind of negative consequences right now. Keep in mind, I ran finances there, and often when there are late tickets, when there are late tickets, when there are a lot of late tickets, that's when the company is most profitable. Okay, and there are many reasons why I can't go into right now, but that's when the company is often most profitable. So, why not have late tickets, right? And people have to understand that as they tackle this problem. But that first point is the most important one. It's the massive variations in volume over a very short amount of time without notice or without warning.
Thank you, Jimmy. Scott, do you want the panelists to have any closing remarks, or are we at a hard stop?
No, we,
This is,
yeah, as long as we keep them short, that would be great. I just know everybody kind of planned on an hour, but if we keep them short, and then I just have a couple quick things and we can wrap it up.
okay. So Kelly, got any closing remarks or thoughts? Because we're going to go back to ladies first again.
I'm sorry, I missed part of what you said there, Megan. I really don't have anything more. I think this was a great discussion, and I really appreciate the time and opportunity to come forth and talk about some of our challenges and some of the opportunities that we also have in front of us. It's going to be another challenging year. Again, I believe that communication is the key to helping with both late locates and trying to understand exactly what's going on the job site. So as long as the utility and everybody involved is providing a contact, we can try to work through some of these issues together. Obviously, there's a lot on everybody's plate with the future of damage prevention and a lot of great technology out there that we will be utilizing, and I hope we get there soon. But for the time being, picking up the phone and making that phone call, I think is always a good option. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Kelly. Randy, anything you want to say in closing?
Real quick, I'll just say the midnight ticket, the advanced notification and load leveling by areas is a big help. It's not the end all be all, but it's every little piece helps. And thank you.
Thank you. James?
Yeah, again, thank you for this opportunity. I think the biggest thing to remember here is that we're all in this together. We're working toward the same goal. And I think that gets lost sometimes where everyone wants to point the fingers at everyone else. And I think if we recognize that and, as an excavator, we do our part to limit our ticket scopes, don't overcall, focus on the work that we have in front of us, and I think just working together is going to be the biggest thing in the short term that's going to solve a lot of the problems we have.
Thank you, sir. And then Bruce?
Yeah, I just want to mention that I think the notification systems take this very personal. I know they do. And that's a good thing. And we are that central communication piece, and we like to listen to others and the challenges they're having and how we can be an effective partner in helping you help us help you. And that sounds corny, but it is true. And there isn't a silver bullet, a panacea for the nation. I think it has to be done by state or region, because that's how, between weather and all those other factors, that's what's needed. And appreciate the time and the opportunity here. Thank you.
All right, Lewis.
Oh, look at me getting the last word. So yeah, this is all about communication, which is excellent that we're doing this town hall. Appreciate very much Scott setting this up. And if there was one thing that we've heard quite a bit about, it all goes back to these maps. I mean, whether it's done in the SUE phase, how those are shared, how that information, if somebody's going to maintain the marks, having accurate maps in front of them is helpful. The locators need them. The excavators can use them. Enhanced positive response where information is shared. We've got to get to a place of more transparency. And I think that will also reduce friction and smooth out this process. But again, excellent questions from everybody. Do look forward to seeing that chat out there. And thank you for having me.
And thank you to all the panelists and Scotts for providing this opportunity. Sorry if we had to cut some conversations short. Trying to get as many people to the table as we could. And Scott, I imagine you're going to tell us how we find this recording for later in the chat log among the other closing remarks you may have.
I am, yeah. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, panel. You guys were awesome. And the common theme, I think, was communication. And I think part of the issue moving forward is to try and blend the ideas for short-term improvements while we're still also working on long-term improvements, because they're different solutions. But the communication was great. And, that's what the Excavation Safety Alliance's town halls are intended to be, kind of the virtual industry town hall, so people can air these questions and comments. And we will post the recording on excavationsafetyalliance.com. Probably be up there Tuesday, and we'll send out the link when it is up there. We're also going to have some actual keynote presentations and things like that coming up soon. and the whole Excavation Safety Alliance concept is kind of evolving. So we'd love to hear what you think, what topics we should have for town halls, and you're going to get a survey. So please let us know. I got some great ones already today. We're also going to take this and kind of summarize it into an article for the DP Pro magazine. So one of the ideas behind these town halls is it's great to have the conversation, but we want to keep the conversations going. So we're going to put that in an article, and then we'll also have conversation, digital conversation available on the site. And if you don't get the magazine, you can get it for free at dp-pro.com. And kind of the last plug I wanted to make was we're talking about late locates and locators, and I think probably everybody on this call understands that the locators are absolutely a vital part of this industry, and often they don't get enough acknowledgement and appreciation. And so a number of years ago, we created Locator Safety Awareness Week, and it is the week of April 25th this year. So there's a bunch of free tools if you want to thank locators, promote locator safety. They're all free at locatorsafety.com. And other than that, don't forget that the Global Excavation Safety Conference in 2023 is February 14th through the 16th in Tampa. So that's really it. We really appreciate everybody's time, and especially the panel for jumping in. I think everybody did a great job. So thanks, and sorry we went a little over, but I think it was great conversation. So everybody have a great day and stay safe. Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks. Good job.